think I probably do need a haircut. Let me ask you one question. When is a beat 'em up not a beat 'em up? Bringing an energy rifle to a fistfight? SEGA way, apparently. Hello everybody, welcome to the ReReview, the series where I get to replay and reassess games from my favourite gaming era. I'm Brian, and if you are a regular viewer of this series, then you'll already know that I'm a massive fan of Amiga games. In each episode of this series, I'm taking a look back at games that came out in the early 90s, seeing what the critics thought of them at the time, and then replaying them to see how well they stack up today. Sometimes these are going to be games that have been chosen by our channel members, and sometimes they're going to be games that I personally reviewed during my time working on Games X and Amiga Action. Details of how you can become one of our VIP members, along with a link, will be in the video description below. For this latest episode, the game that I'm going to be replaying is the Amiga version of Sega's Alien Storm, which was developed by Tech Software and published by US Gold in 1991. Whenever I talk to you about a game and the people who made it on these videos, I always usually try to remain positive. After all, nobody ever sets out to make a bad video game. There's no getting away from the fact though that if you were to visit any Amiga online forum and find discussions about the worst developers, the name of Tech Software would crop up regularly. While I would personally rank their Human Killing Machine as the worst Amiga game of all time, it would be unfair to say that they didn't have some successes as well. You need look no further than their conversion of Capcom's Mercs as a prime example. They were founded in 1987 by John Prince and Donald Campbell, who already had a string of popular 8-bit games to their names. Their first game as Tech was 720 Degrees for the Spectrum, Commodore 64 and Amstrad, based on the Atari coin-op. The game earned strong reviews and sold well, and so for the next few years Tech would specialise in arcade conversions and work closely with publisher US Gold. In the 5 years between 1987 and 1992, they would produce over 30 games, sometimes producing multiple versions of each. Notable releases included the action game based on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, the chart-topping versions of Strider, and somehow managing to squeeze the entirety of Sega's Thunderblade onto the Spectrum. Thanks to the huge success of Outrun in 1987, US Gold had built up a strong relationship with Sega, which included the excellent version of Shadow Dancer that I reviewed in Games X Issue 1 and covered in episode 27 of the ReReview. This led to them picking up the rights to produce home versions of Alien Storm, and the programming duties were handed to Tech. The arcade original is a game that's not easily defined, looking and playing like a beat 'em up, despite the fact that the player never once throws a punch or a kick. Both the Lemon Amiga and Hall of Light websites actually have this game listed as a shoot 'em up, despite the fact that the action more closely resembles Golden Axe. Amiga Action also placed this game in their Shoot 'em Up Super League when they reviewed it in 1991 as well. There are 3 characters to choose from, each with different abilities and weapons, as well as first-person bonus stages. Up to 3 players can work together to fight off the alien hordes across 6 stages. The Amiga version retained all but the 3-player mode, only catering for 2 players instead. All 3 characters did remain though, which is not something that could be said for all versions of the game. Throughout the early 90s, as the popularity of consoles began to grow in the UK, Tech turned their attention to making games for the Master System, Mega Drive and Game Gear. They would even go on to produce the 3DO, CDI, SNES and Jaguar versions of Delphine's Flashback. UKGN's very own Pad has been telling me for years that the 3DO version is the best version of the game, and it's not just because Conrad wears a red t-shirt. They turned their attention to handheld consoles for most of the late 90s before concentrating solely on mobile games from the early 2000s. Both Prince and Campbell remained in charge of the company right the way until it closed its doors in 2021. Over 34 years in the business, they were clearly doing something right, and I think it's safe to say that Tech Software, known more recently as Tech Design Studios, are one of the most successful British games companies of all time, regardless of how good you think their output was at times. Now it's time to see what I thought about Alien Storm first time around in my original review. My review appeared in issue 19 of Games X from August 1991, the very same issue that you can actually see on the shelf behind me. Rodland from the Sales Curve was our cover game and our much deserved Game of the Week. My contributions to the issue included the reviews of Alien Storm and Monster Business, as well as the second part of my player's guide for the Killing Game Show. I stated that the game's sprites were pretty close to the arcade original, although I expressed my disappointment that the developers had merely ported everything over from the Atari ST rather than utilise the extra colours of the Amiga. I thought it worked best as a multiplayer game, but did point out that the Amiga version only catered for 2 players rather than the 3 players of the original. I also bemoaned the lack of variety in the gameplay, but pointed out that this was actually a fault of the arcade game. The game plays relatively well, but there just isn't enough variety. However, it's the arcade original rather than this conversion that lets the game down. I awarded a total score of 3.5 X's out of 5, with gameplay earning 13 out of 20, with both lastability and presentation earning 12 out of 20. Here's how my score compares to the ones that appeared in other Amiga magazines. Now it's time for the playtest. Let's see how the game stands up today. Right, I am playing this on the A500 Mini, where it gives you the option to activate a CD32 controller first and foremost. So that's what I've done. Here's the 3 characters that you can choose from. You've got Gordon, you've got Carla, or you've got Scooter. So let's go with Gordon first and foremost. Basically what the CD32 controller allows is that you can have your smart bomb mapped to the B button rather than having to press the space bar. So as you can tell pretty much straight away is that even though you are wielding an energy rifle, the gameplay is very reminiscent of something like Golden Axe or Final Fight. So what you've got in terms of the controls is that you press the fire button to obviously fire your gun, but if you hold down the fire button and then tap down you can roll, or push up you can jump. And it's not an ideal control method, but it's considering that the arcade original would have had multiple buttons to have such controls, it works reasonably well on a single button joystick. So these energy canisters that I'm picking up are what build up the power for your smart bombs. It is a shame that, like a lot of arcade conversions on the Amiga at the time, that this was a direct port of the Atari ST version. So you're stuck with 16 colours rather than the 32 that the Amiga could have had. So this is one of the frequent interludes that you get of a little first-person shooting section. You don't actually get to move. All you can move here is the target. Would have been nice for any on-screen indication as to whether you're being hit by the aliens were a little bit more obvious. So as you can see, not only is there a lack of variety in the actual alien types, it's also the backgrounds are all very similar as well. Damn you! I'll switch to Scooter the robot on this continue, because this is where the game actually just become more of a beat 'em up than ever, because this character doesn't have a gun, he has a whip. It's all too easy to get caught up in the corner of the screen. I do like Scooter's smart bomb though. He like blows himself up and then just a replacement version of him just runs on. Now this is one of my favourite parts of the game. You get these fast moving sections where you're running along the road, and the game does actually fire for you on these sections. Literally all you have to do is make sure that you move and avoid things. But just like the first person sections in the in between levels, this section doesn't really go on for long enough. I think out of the 3 characters that you can choose from, this is probably my favourite of the 3. You actually do feel like you're hitting something with this character, as opposed to the gun that the other 2 characters have. Oh no, game over. As game over screens go, this one's actually pretty entertaining as well, because you obviously run onto in front of a panel of judges, one of which seems to be the guy from Golden Axe. I'll try playing it, starting a Scooter from the word go, and see how far I can get. It's definitely a game where at times you're better off letting the enemies come to you rather than running around the screen. Yeah, if you've played the arcade original, you'll notice that there's quite a lot of cutbacks that the developers have had to include in order to get the game down onto the Amiga. That's nothing new as far as arcade conversions are concerned. There's a lot of games did things similar. It's all about concentrating your efforts where it matters, and making sure that all the characters looked arcade accurate was
more important than anything else, really, when it came to converting this game. Just like the Amiga version of Final Fight. See, and that piece of scenery there is identical to the opening level of the game. So it's almost like the game's just thrown you back to start level 1, even though it hasn't. They've definitely got further into the game by using Scooter from the off. Yeah, see, as you can see, my health was going down there, and I had there was no on-screen indicator letting me know that was happening. I think with the amount of energy that the game allows you to pick up, you're definitely supposed to use the smart bombs more often than I have been doing. Once again, that section was over pretty much before it started, disappointingly. Oh my god, a new alien type. In. I'm not going to last much longer here, am I? Let's face it. Nope, there we go. Game over. So yeah, so you can definitely get further into the game by using Scooter. I think he's definitely the character that I would recommend you play as. So yeah, so let's call it a day for the playtest there. Going to move on to the re-review now and sum up my feelings about the game.
Before you even load the game up, there are forces working against Alien Storm. Firstly, there's the arcade game itself, which was never that good or memorable to begin with. And then there's the fact that it exists in a genre that's always been poorly served on the Amiga. What chance was there that this game was going to be any good? When I made the arcade brawler Super League a few months back, I instantly placed this game straight into the rubbish tier. And having played the game more for the purposes of this video, I can now say that that assessment was a little bit harsh. There are definitely positives here, so let's talk about those. Despite being a direct port from the Atari ST, the graphics here are actually a pretty good facsimile of the arcade original. Yes, there's a lot of detail missing from the backgrounds, but the aliens and the characters themselves, which let's face it is the important part, look good. The two different types of shooting sections that are here are also pretty enjoyable. It's just a shame that they don't go on for very long. The scrolling is undeniably terrible, but thankfully the game only does it between waves of action, and so therefore it doesn't really distract you from the gameplay. Also does a better job than most of catering for a single button joystick, although I did find that both jumping and rolling were a little bit too fiddly to use properly. There are many arcade conversions on the Amiga that I've played that are a lot worse than Alien Storm, but it's also far from being the best. So I'm definitely going to put it higher up the Arcade Brawler Super League than I put it when I made that video. Like I said when I reviewed it first time around, there is unfortunately a severe lack of variety to the gameplay, and that's what prevents it from being a game that you should play. As for a score, I don't think I could give it any higher than 4 or 5 out of 10 today. Thank you for watching this episode of the ReReview. I really hope you enjoyed it. All opinions expressed in this video are entirely mine and not those of the UK Gaming Network team. If you have any memories of Alien Storm, I'd love to hear them in the comments. And don't forget, you can catch up on any episodes that you may have missed in this series by clicking on the playlist that should be on screen about now. Make sure to give us a like and subscribe to show your support for the channel. And if you want to have a hand in shaping this series and picking the games that I talk about, why not have a look at our VIP membership perks while you're at it? You'll even get to watch these videos early. Until next time, happy retro gaming. Bye for now.